So this is the tool that I used in that escape. And it's really simple. It's just a knob which I got down at the hardware store. I modified a handcuff key and crazy glued it in. And then I ground down a little bit of the top and glued in a super strong magnet. And then the other part is just a butter knife from the drawer. And I don't really recommend using a knife if you're ever going to do this, but this isn't sharp and it's blunt. Something like a thin metal ruler might work better. Anything so that you can tell. It's not like a dowel or something like that. Something where you can tell when it's flat, so you can tell its orientation, because it's really important to keep this thing oriented flat. And so what I did to modify the key to go in here is obviously I chopped off the top of one of these keys just so it was shorter, and I measured that relative to the depth in here, and I just kept shaving off a little bit and a little bit until it was just about a millimeter higher. So if you look at this actually inserted into the keyway, you'll see underneath there's about a millimeter clearance between the plastic and the metal of the cuff. So I cut off the end of the key, and then also I did a 45-degree cut along the side, so you can see if we look at these in the same orientation that this has been cut, and that helps. I think it helps in the insertion. It's probably a lot of people. I saw a couple other people doing it, and they said it worked really well, and I think it does actually help to get it in there to set it, because you don't have the back, the key, the heel, this part right here interrupting you trying to get it into the keyhole. But I think the real reason for it is so you can kind of wiggle a key that's a little bit not the right size to go in there. But that's it. And so just look at the theory of operations is I did cut a notch here, and that is lined up with the flag of the key. So that notch, so that way I can easily tell what orientation the key is behind my back when I can't see it. So this keyway is facing down, the flag is facing down, so I'll orient the key so that it is facing down as well. And the idea behind this is to keep the device perpendicular to the key, to the face of the handcuff, so that it will, when you get it over the hole, it will just glide right in. And so when you're behind your back, you're just kind of hunting around for that hole, and once you found it, you just got to get it in there. Once it's in there, you just pull the key away, and the magnet on top actually is touching the top of the key, and there's actually a brass screw hole where this is being glued into, so that the magnet, so you can see like it stays on the bottom. It's that magnet really helps to pull it into the keyway, and also it holds it in the keyway so it doesn't pop out, and once it's turned even a little bit, it's locked in there, so it's not going to fall out. You'll think it would fall out, but it doesn't fall out. Both the magnet and just any sort of motion on the key the flag will catch on the inner keyway. So once it's in there, and your hand comes up, you still have the ability to use your thumb. So you can still, like, this is double locked, so I can remove the double lock. Oh, sorry, it's in the opposite direction. So I can remove, you can hear the double lock being removed, and then I move it back in the other direction to do the single lock. And this thing is with these little ridges on it, that just the knob came like that. It's designed to be that, but you can get a lot of torque on this key just by rubbing the edge of your thumb across it. And that's really useful. So if you can get your thumb on this side, you can do this side. You even use the little notch that you do for determining the location of the flag. But anything that you can grab onto, you can move it in either direction fairly quickly. I mean, it is difficult because you're really going to be cranking your wrist around underneath it to get up on top. And that's basically it. Once the double lock is off and the single lock is off, you just move it to the hand and remove the key and put it in the other one. I wouldn't recommend, if you're doing this for speed, to move the key from one to the other. I suggest you use a different tool for that, because actually getting this key in here and turning it is actually difficult to do. It's much faster to do it without a key. So that's the theory, and it's very simple, very simple. Just get this thing to be in the flag in the right direction. Just hunt around on here. Once you get it in there, it just falls right in, and then you pull your knife or your ruler away, and then you're literally just using your thumb to clear the double lock, and then pulling it the other way and removing the single lock, and then you're out of it. So it's a very effective little tool. And sort of the disadvantages of this is that it's kind of hard to conceal. Like you got this big knife or whatever, or ruler or whatever. I mean, you could have something that folds up and is much easier. And also this thing needs to be oriented. You have to kind of know which way, and this will be probably for most tools, but you have to know which way the flag is and which way the flag is that you're hunting around. If I actually put this the wrong way around, so the flag is opposite of this, you're going to know that because you're never going to get it in there. So you do have to make sure, and that's what that notch is there for. It's just so you can double check it. So if you get it around the corner here and you accidentally move it on the cuff, that you can easily say, okay, oh, I can feel it here, I'm going to reorient it. So that is one thing, and imagine most tools will have that problem, is making sure that you can line up the key with the actual keyway, where the flag is. The other thing is that this thing could fall off, like when you're trying to take this out of your pocket or something like that, it could fall off, and then you're kind of you're going to drop it on the floor. So that is, I mean, this is a very strong magnet. I mean, it's not going to fall off very easily, but that is a thing, and it does actually slide off. If you can't really pull this thing off. It's quite difficult to pull off, but sliding it off is really easy. And I bet you that this thing, because it's not articulated, I mean, this is just a flat piece of metal, is that it's not articulated. And I've seen some other tools that are articulated, and I've never touched them, so I don't know how they work. But I bet you they would be really useful. That would be really useful for getting around if you were in rigid cuffs or something like that, where you really couldn't move your hands. But it is fairly difficult. I think the key thing, or the hardest thing, is to get this key in the keyway. Once you got something in the keyway, it's easy, but getting that in the keyway is the hard part, because you got to match up the flag and then also get it right over top of the keyway. So that is quite a difficult thing to do. What I do like about this is, for this particular type of cuff, a chain cuff behind you, you have enough motion to be able to grab this, and it's very easy to do the turn. If you had something that was, like just like this, if this was fixed on the end, that this is going to be hitting your other wrist, or if you're trying to turn this way, this wrist is in the way. So you don't have a lot, if you look at it, if your hands are out like this and the cuffs are in between, you don't have a lot of actual room for moving something. So an alternative would be something that, like a universal joint on this, where you could move it like this and then turn it. And I've tried that with a Zac tool. The alternative I was using was a Zac tool, and perhaps magnetizing, putting magnet in here or something to kind of inside this part to kind of help that getting into the keyway and cutting off the edge of this key. But it's very difficult to actually turn this once it's in. If you look at this, if you're like this, trying to come up and over and grab this, you're kind of ending up doing this type of thing, trying to rotate it. At least that's where I end up with my flexibility and how my arms and wrists work. This is totally doable. You can do this, but it's a little bit painful to do it. You're really crushing in on your cuffs on the top of your hands here, and it's a difficult thing to do. I find this quite easy. Once it's in the keyway, it's really easy just to turn. I mean, it's basically just doing this. I mean, your hand is in a slightly different position when you're doing this. You don't have a lot of actual room to move it, but it's, as I think you saw in the actual escape, that you're moving it, like you need a bunch of little movements to do this, and going one way and then forcing the double lock out, which means taking a bunch of force on it, and then going the other way and trying to hold it while you're moving your arm. That's pretty easy with this tool. That's what I really like about this. And it's small and works well. So that's my experience with this. I'm not saying this is a great tool. I think it's great for being the situation, exactly the situation where you do have a chain, so you can get your thumb over top of the keyway, and it's fast for that. Once that's in there, it's very quick to go through. There's probably some faster ways of doing this, and some ones that will handle it either like a hinge cuff or a rigid cuff with some articulation and stuff like that. But this is very good for this situation. I think this works very well for this situation. I think you can see, and that was the first. That time one that I did was the first time I ever tried doing it. So I imagine if with some practice, I mean, I practiced without locking the cuffs, but that's the first time I did it with all the cuffs locked. So I think this worked really well, and maybe you've got some ideas in here and maybe you don't. The only thing I'll caution you on is extremely dangerous to do this by yourself. I don't do this by myself because it's really easy to get yourself caught. Like if your hands are behind your back like this and you drop this, or it tightens and it hurts your wrist, you're not going to get out of that. Or yeah, and if you can't find this, because it takes a while to learn how to get this thing in here, you're going to be trapped in these cuffs, and it's going to be a very bad situation. So never do this alone. Make sure there's someone there who can use the key and let you out if you have any troubles, just for safety. And I really being serious about it. The time you saw the timed was the first time I put actually both cuffs on and did the double locks. That's the very first time. And I only did it a couple of times, actually locking both of them. And all I did was I would just hold it with this part on the back of my wrist, because that's where I'm putting all the pressure in to come here. So it doesn't really matter if this thing's open or not. So that's a big safety thing. The other thing for safety is to be able to see behind you. I set up this camera, which is just my iPhone, and I connected it into my laptop with a USB, and then I could hold it so that I could see my hands by looking in front of me. So I had the monitor in front and the camera behind, and that really helped me to see what I was doing. And when you're doing this, you're going to try and keep this thing as flat as possible, and also keep this knife as flat as possible. And it's hard unless you have really good proprioception. That's something that's pretty hard to do. So kind of, knowing where to look as well is very useful to be able to see what's happening behind you. Someone behind you telling you, say, oh, it's to the left or to the right, or moving your hand to the correct position would work well. But yeah, just be really safe out there. This can be, locking your hands behind your back is I think a really big deal. So please be super safe. Thank you very much.